Hello, my name is Russ Greve, and I'm a member of the Hopkinton Historical Society. And I'm presenting here as part of the Hopkinton Treasures series at the invitation of John Palmer, your regular host. I'm departing from the usual format and presenting on a singular historical subject. Instead, I plan to have some personal remarks, some thoughts on history, life as a pinball machine. Finally, the examples in the pursuit of Hopkinton treasures. I was born too late to be part of the greatest generation and too soon to be part of the members of the boomers. So that makes me a member of the silent generation. We may be called the silent because we were relatively few of us, and time is making even fewer of us. As a child in the 1940s and 50s, I and my peers had unimaginable freedom compared to the children of today. Perhaps it was the result of fathers, uncles, and older brothers leading away at the war, preventing them from keeping an eye on us. But I want to take a little riff here to kind of throw in some different things about being young at that time. One thing I was thinking about was the sights, sounds, and smells that are no longer part of everyday life. Of sights, I think of troop trains full of soldiers going off to war, and freight trains with all kinds of military hardware like tanks and guns and things like that. And then there were the blimps that floated across the sky almost soundlessly, and some sounds. The sound of coal going down a metal chute from the delivery truck and shooting through a basement window into a coal bin. A very loud sound, high-pitched sound, metallic. The choo-choo. The choo-choo of a steam train. And if you think of a steam train, it's choo, 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 as the wheels would spin, trying to gain traction. Some smells. We'll save the smells till the last here. Of garbage cans, rife with flies and maggots in the summertime. The same being picked up by garbage men for delivery to pig farms. Walking or riding to school, I wanted to draw a little comparison and contrast to schools today. And I was thinking of Hopkinton. Schools of various grades clustered along a single street during weekdays, many with half-empty buses, and a great line of cars dropping off and picking off students, slowing traffic, and creating opportunities for creative meditation. I attended a new school, and that new school was in 1941, from K to 8, and I was a member of the last 8th grade graduating, which made it revert to a K to 6 or 1 to 6. I never saw school buses until the 7th grade, when kids came from different district schools who had lower grades. Rarely did a parent pick up or drop off a child, because that child would be called a sissy, and surely nobody wanted to be called a sissy. Now, walking and later riding a bicycle to school, we'd go along alternate routes, sometimes with streets. But I was lucky to one route was an abandoned railroad bed, which was called the Gee Whiz Tracks. And another was a river that flowed down around the neighborhood. And unlike today, as a youngster, I could carry a jackknife in my pocket without creating havoc there was lots of time to indulge our curiosity on the way home. That river and the railroad bed were really quite attractive. The Little League was something we saw on the movie news. They used to have news in the movies, and they would have something called the World Series of Little World Series. And to me, these were kids from places like Pennsylvania or New Jersey. We had pickup games, and one of the things that's so different today is there were no adults present. So we had lots of arguments and discussions about safe or not or out or whatever it was. And when it got to the point where one of the kids who had the ball or the bat said, "Well, I'm going home." So we learned the art of compromise, and that kind of sticks with us I say us, meaning the generation over time. Treks to camp to build, to the woods to build camp. From tar paper we got from a company called American Reinforced Paper. It was just up the road. And we could pick blueberries in season, in the summertime. And we could make Christmas logs in the wintertime, cutting down birch trees, unknown to the owners, I guess. And in summertime, we had, after supper, we could go out and we would play hide and seek or kick the can or whatever game we might devise. And the street lights going on was usually the time that it was time to go home. Now, library books were a source of really information about frontiersmen and Indians that I saw in the movies. And it was my introduction to history, which became a lifelong interest. Things like the eastern tribes of the Iroquois, the Shawnee, and Joseph Brant, Tecumseh, Daniel Boone, and Davy Crockett, all those people, Jim Bridger, fur trappers, even the Oregon Trail. The bicentennial made it blossom into a concentration on the 18th century for me, with emphasis on the military. But that faded as I knew more and more and got more deeply into it. It became into economics and technology and religious tensions, and all this got thrown together, and it really added a much more mature view to the whole idea of the American Revolution. I want to share some of my thoughts and observations about history with the hope that it will lead to a deeper appreciation as history as a part of our lives. Sharing your family stories with different generations might be a way to do that. So I'm going to start with I call it a tortured analogy, and it deals with pinball machines. Now, I'm thinking a classic 1950s vintage. It's a box. It stands about this high, this wide, this high, and it's inclined, and it's got a glass top, and it's electrically operated. I mean, electrically powered, but it's coin activated. And inside it has these little round things called bumpers, and it also has these things called flippers that when you activate little buttons on the side, it pushes a little ball which is activated when you pull back on a plunger, and it shoots this ball up around a circle. And the idea is that when the ball comes down, it hits the bumpers and bounces back and forth, and causes the ball to eventually fall into. It's usually it's usually found into arcades and ballrooms. Now, Jim Cozens and his professionals have provided the site and my opportunity to meet with you. I will provide the voice, noise, as I bounce from subject to subject. Hopefully, you viewers will see some light as you respond to my remarks. Remember, I told you it was a tortured analogy. We humans are launched on our own pinball game of life as infants with simple needs. We're like the ball, climbing up to that apex, not much happening, and as youngsters, teens, and adults, the game takes off. We encounter obstacles and opportunities. Think of those bumpers. An activated flipper could be considered a parent or a friend helping us along, giving another chance to light up the scoreboard of our world until the lights go out and we drop down the drain. No, I did say drain. Yeah, it's a kind of a bad joke, but that's really what the name of the part is in the pinball machine. Now, there are a number of ways to think of history here, and here's one of them. I think of it with three components: people, place, and time. People. Depending on ill or good fortune, we have a personal life expectation of 1 to maybe even 100 plus years. We then become history. Now, some folks conclude that that makes the study of history irrelevant to the living. I hope you viewers at least consider people fascinating. The influence of modern social media certainly supports that opinion. I do. So do most historians. Think biographies. Consider. Each of us is a living history book, or whether or not it gets published. The second is place. Place is integral to our lives. It begins in the family as infants and expands as we get older. Most of us have childhood memories of places that we can vividly recall. A place changes over time due to natural and human influences. Revisiting a childhood home can provoke a series of wonder or loss. The hill that seems so great is just a hillock. The great pond is more like a seasonal puddle. For Hopkinton residents, time has brought great changes, from a small blue-collar town to a large suburban bedroom community. Beyond geography, we get a sense of where we belong in society. I remember teachers speaking of the possibility of becoming president. President was assumed to be of the USA, not a corporate VIP. Time is complex. It has past, present, and future components. We usually consign the future to the unknowable, rightly so. We don't know our allotment of time on Earth, but it's a key part of history in its sense. Pinball moment. Thinking of Hopkinton treasures led me to this ideas of maps and treasures and treasure hunts. In the mid-1970s, Charlesview, where I live, was in the early stages of development. Families with young children were coming in. They came from many geographic areas with many different personal experiences. Women, being more gregarious than the guys, looked for a way to make a neighborhood, and they came up with treasure hunts. Now, the couple would be responsible for a monthly hunt, or maybe 6 weeks, whatever they could do. There were clues, poetic, and textual, and even musical. 2 or 3 couples would pile into a car and would drive all over the area towns. Naturally, each police force would have to be informed about people exiting cars and running around with flashlights looking for clues. At the end, we would have a prearranged place and have a social time. And it was great fun. And it worked as a bonding experience, consequently, with men and women, and came together, and they found the Hopkinton Youth Soccer. Some of them became civic leaders. I'm relating this as an example of a missed historical opportunity. Then I was deeply involved in bicentennial activities. I acted as an assistant coach and did some administrative tasks for the soccer league, ending up with a thick loose leaf binder of registration information. So I had lists of players, and coaches, and teams. Later, when I looked at the binder, I thought, years later, I sought to get a history of the founding of the soccer league. Unfortunately, the principals had moved away. All I had to give the Historical Society was the lone binder. Humans have different cultures and experiences over time. Think of it as being a variable rather than a constant. In childhood, time seems to pass so slowly. To an old geezer like me, time is flying by. In either case, time marches on. What's done is done. There ain't no going back. Time being the ultimate constraint on our personal existence makes it a fascinating subject for study. We have devised many ways to measure time, from the infinitesimally short to the astronomically huge and long. We Americans are an impatient people. We live in the present with eyes to the future. But our eyes are increasingly centered on the personal at the expense of the communal. Time is a commodity. Time is money. Time, spend it wisely. Earlier I mentioned our lifespan of 0 to 100 years, a generation, defined as roughly 25 years as a convenient way to think of a person from going from infancy to adulthood. Because I've lived through 3 of them, I've noticed some stories of past generations get revived for popular consumption, like Hopkinton's Cinderella story of Agnes Surriage and Sir Harry Franklin. A century seems a good chunk of history to consider. It's, to me, a person of American European descent, centuries have their own major attributes formed by that culture. I think of them this way. The 17th, religious wars in Europe. 18th, the age of reason and human progress. 19th, the growth of capitalism. 20th, nationalist and ideological wars. The 21st, age of human transformation, elimination, who knows? I've stated them in a neat category, but they really overlap, evolving one into another. Another view of time is circularity. Chinese culture has 12 animals in the zodiac, with birth, growth, and decline. There are repetitive processes. People, tribes, nations, continents, planets, stars, the universe. Everything changes with cycles. It occurs to me that I have omitted another important component of history, chance. A great example, for me, in the 18th century, was the Battle of Long Island, which occurred in 1776, long in September, during the War for American Independence. The American forces had been defeated at the Battle of Long Island and were fleeing, attempting to get to the island of Manhattan. The British Navy blocked the way to safety. And so during the night, campfires were lit, and both armies were were resting. During the night, General Washington had called on General Glover's massed regiments of soldiers and sailors to man boats, or rowboats mostly, that he had ordered to be collected so that they could row the army across the East River. Well, during the night, the British Navy lost station on the East River because of changes in wind. And the colonials, or the Americans, were doing a pretty good job of getting across there, but there was still a large portion of the army that was left when dawn came. But with dawn, a fog came up, and the British Navy was not able to see what was going on. Therefore, the Americans got across, the army was saved, and rather than the revolution ending there, the revolution would go on for another 7 years. Having covered the components of history now, I'd like to go into a little bit about views, which is called historiography, which is the sort of the interpretation of history. During my lifetime, it has evolved from the great man theory, great leaders of the world, making all the history of the world, to an evolution about the everyman, the people. People make the difference, the individual people, the little people. I think it began when TV had a story about, it was called Roots, and it was about a multi-generational family of black slaves in America. And it led to a great explosion in the interest in genealogy. People like George Washington, John Adams, Jefferson, any of the generals, gave way to the average soldier. I'm thinking of Joseph Plum Martin, a Connecticut soldier in the Revolution, talking about things like trying to find food and the privations of war, and not the great overview of war. Economists also entered into this historiography, saying that economics really determines history. Now, I know you're probably looking forward to a bit of Hopkinton history, and it involves search for Hopkinton treasures, and the subject begins with Bear Hill. Don't let the idea of the pinball machine go away. A while ago, a friend of mine recollected that Bear Hill may not be Bear Hill. It might be B-H-A-Y-R Hill. So I began to look about, what was this about a Bear Hill? And I didn't meet with any success. The only hint I got was a local real estate development in the 1980s was called Bear Hill Estates. And there the whole question rested. However, that left the questions about the Bear Hill Cemetery. The story I first heard years ago was that there were 2 graves of British soldiers buried there. And given my knowledge of the 18th century, I said, I don't really think that's right. So I pursued it and found there were 2 soldiers killed in King Philip's War in a fight at Hassanamisco, which is now Grafton, on November 19th, 1675. And that was during King Philip's War. Their names were Lieutenant Ezekiel Curtis and Thomas Andrews. My source was New England Historic Genealogical, Volume 25, January of 1871, pages 10 and 11, just so you know where I got this information. Captain Henchman, who led the raid on the Indian camp, mentions retreating and later returning to find the dead, but no mention of how they got to be interred at Bear Hill. Now, even those 2 simple sentences were a source of past contention. Was it November 6th or November 9th, 1670? Was Lieutenant Ezekiel or Philip Curtis? A petition of Obedience Curtis of Roxbury, whose husband was killed by the Indians when under Captain Henchman, is referred to as the widow of Philip. Captain Henchman called them Zekel. Technically, they were British soldiers, but I think American or colonial soldiers is be more correct. Local tradition has some additions to the story. Gordon Hopper, a local historian, writing in the Milford Daily News in 1975, said that Colonel Harold Wood spoke to the Historical Society calling two soldiers British. In 1967, Dorothy McGuire signed a history form indicating that there were 15 veterans buried there and 2 British soldiers. The 1989 survey, the Hopkinton survey, Area J, Form 808, indicated west of the cemetery was a cone-shaped depression, about 30 feet across, at the site of an early Native American village. The depression is said to have been lined with bark and used as a corn storage pit. It goes on to mention the 2 colonial soldiers, 15 Native Americans, and 2 British soldiers. The story gets more confusing because the repeated assertion of 2 British soldiers buried there. An embellishment is though it was a marker placed which was stolen by vandals. The 15 veterans noted above had been supplanted by Indians instead. Where do I go next? I bet you guessed. The Hopkinton Historical Society, also known as the Hopkinton History Center, a location of Hopkinton treasures. One Monday afternoon, I dropped in and explained my situation. Linda Conley was working on materials from the Fitch collection. She bent down, raised the letter, and said, "You might be interested in this," and handed it to me. Alert, another pinball moment. It was a receipt dated October 2nd and November 13th, 1776, acknowledging payment by John Jones, Esquire, to the 7 signers. Who were these men? They were British prisoners of war on what is known as parole. Parole was an 18th century get-out-of-jail-free card extended to officers in exchange for agreeing not to continue fighting until after they were exchanged. I was shocked. The Brits evacuated Boston on March 17th, 1776. Some people refer to that as St. Patrick's Day, but old New Englanders called it Evacuation Day. It used to be a half day of holiday. Anyway, I reached out to a friend about that story, and he told me about a British ship coming into Boston after the evacuation that had been coming from England, and was unaware that their compatriots had gone up to Nova Scotia. So when I asked what regiment, he said, "Well, I think that the 71st Regiment. He's one of those Highland regiments." So I said, "Well, wait a minute, let me look." And I looked, sure enough, there was a Robert Campbell among them, and Campbells were leaders in that particular regiment at the time. So this has opened a major new avenue of investigation, not just about Bear Hill Cemetery, but the story of these British officers. I have another Hopkinton nugget, to pursue. I made a couple of local phone calls about here, Bear Hill, and the name Oracini came up. I never met him, but he was a local authority on Indians and the Bear Hill area. Once again, I went to the History Center and was given a file on Oracini, and I started to look through it. Another pinball moment. Remember Bhayr Hill? A front-page article in the Middlesex News dated Wednesday, October 20, 1988, had an article on Oracini, and they referred to something called fantasy history. Now he, except for his boots, Ora appeared in a picture like a fur trapper from the 1840s. He was a true character of Hopkinton. The article reports on or his comments on a variety of topics. What caught my eye was his mention of Bear Hill, B-H-A-Y-E-R. First, it might have been a family name. In subsequent Google search, it yielded both Indian Asian some origin possibilities, and Muntebare, the people of Bear, a place in Western Ireland with its roots as a family in Gaelic, which I am unable to pronounce. And second, as a center of boot and shoe manufacturing before it was relocated. And I have no clue how to pursue that. But the author of the article referred to him as the mayor of B-H-A-Y-R-E, Bear Hill. So one question about Bear Hill has been resolved. I got to get back to my friend with the good news to his query. Nearing the end of my talk, I plan to present a couple of short items, like I have, like Bear Hill and these British POWs, wrapped up in a little package. And all I'm left with is a couple of items with the strings not tied up and wrapped in neat bows. So they're not a full package of Hopkinton treasures, because time and circumstance has changed that plan. So you and I are left with some unfinished work. I felt I needed to introduce some coherence to my remarks as part of the tortuous analogy of the pinball machine and things like people, place, time, generations, centuries, and the dynamics of existing cultural systems. The 30-foot look to gain a different perspective. I've come up with this synthesis: the 19th century, the growth of capitalism. If asked what defined the 19th century, most Americans would likely say the Civil War. I was taught it was a fight over slavery and states' rights. I consider states' rights was and is a big red herring foisted on the public. Being a somewhat of a contrarian, I believe it was fought over capitalism. Nonsense, you say? Think about this. Northern capitalism was characterized by new ideas, technology, factories, mines, railroads, small land holdings. It depended on a steady influx of immigrants to keep it running and expanding its capital base. And its capital base was the factories and machinery. Southern capitalism was built on the plantation system. Its ancestral origin was a feudal society characterized by large land holdings worked by the landless. In the neo-feudal South, the landless were slaves. Land and slaves were the assets. Slaves were a marketable commodity to be bought and sold. We know who won the Civil War, but it did have some interesting consequences, especially here in Massachusetts. All those immigrants from Europe, my Irish ancestors among them, swelled the population and caused the natives to become anxious about cultural changes. What do you think was the reaction? Have you ever noticed most of the towns in Massachusetts have historical societies? That's because that native anxiety got translated to an interest in history and the ancestors who founded the Commonwealth. It also coincided with the centennial of the USA in 1876. So let's jump to Hopkinton. That year, 1876, a large fire burned a large part of downtown. It happened again in 1882 and again in 1900. The little town was devastated, and folks were occupied in looking for work and doing rebuilding. Not much time to worry about history and cultural change. So no historical society for Hopkinton then. As Hopkins' centennial in 1915 came around, Mrs. Safford wrote a pocket-sized booklet for the occasion, and it was the first history of Hopkinton. It wasn't until 1950 that a historical society was formed. It wasn't until 1992 that it had a home when it purchased the Hopkinton Grange, a former district school. You, the people of Hopkinton, as individuals, have giving money, and collectively as taxpayers, contributing by CPA funds to make the Hopkinton Historical Society the resource that it is today. The Safford book I mentioned above and the Osborne History of Hopkinton are the two histories of Hopkinton. They're not definitive. There are other books treating in limited subjects such as Hopkinton and the Civil War, and one concentrating on the town common. But these are there are many more stories to tell and more treasures to ferret out. And don't forget the present. Our town has undergone a great transformation since the opening of Route 495, with the influx of new residents. What a great opportunity to meld the old with the new. Time marches on. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Danielle Cook. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Hopkinton Public Library, and I'm here with my colleague, Jack Miller.
The Sustainable Green Committee is a group of 15 people working hard to help Hopkinton address the serious environmental issues facing us. We develop plans and practical solutions to help save not only our special slice of the planet, but also help save residents, businesses, and municipal organizations money. Double green power. This includes a municipal aggregation plan, so our electricity comes from green supplies, a climate action plan to help us meet the state's net zero carbon emissions target, and so much more. We also provide useful information on green topics. Our website, hopgreen.org, aims to be a one-stop spot for links to some of the best resources out there on solar, EVs, waste reduction, heating, and safe natural resource management. Our social media and email lists help to keep anyone who wants to be informed about everything we're doing, as well as the latest green news. We're always looking for help, so contact us if you'd like to work on this important mission. Thank you.
Solar power is a free gift from the universe. You'll be very surprised at how many programs there are that offer rebates and information for you to save money on your business and your home. You owe it to yourself to find out more information. Go to the website www.mass.gov/solar-information-programs. Many businesses around town are already taking advantage of solar power. Ask your neighbors what they think. You're saving money and you're saving the planet. Life doesn't get more simple than that. And next member up, we have Frisbee, the green-minded frog. Tell me, Frisbee, how did you come by that moniker?
Well, Bob, what goes around comes around, especially on our beautiful #1 planet Earth. Because remember, we have no planet B.
Righto. So, Frisbee, anything you'd like to croak about tonight? Any bug in your bonnet?
As a matter of fact, there is, Bob. And the name of that bug begins with the letter L for litter. And it's not rocket science how to fix it. You just pick it up. I'll show you. Better yet, don't throw it in the first place.
Especially since most of it is that curse of the universe, plastic.
I get you, Frizz. I never commit that abomination. I always recycle.
Well, Bob, I hate to burst the bubble we've been in, but it turns out it's a myth that recycling is the cure-all. In fact, 95% of it never gets recycled.
So what's an upstanding citizen to do?
So, just don't buy it in the first place. In fact, there are plenty of alternatives out there if you only look. In fact, I, for one, use super duper compostable bamboo dental floss. I'm telling you, it gets the flies out between my teeth really neat. And just say no to those clamshell takeout containers. They're taking over the real clamshells in the ocean. And not only that, they're mucking up my home sweet swamp.
Do you have your own container?
I certainly do. Just bring your own reusable green container, or red as the case may be. It holds plenty.
Well, that's the echo view from the lily pad of Frisbee, the green-minded frog. How about a game of Frisbee, Frisbee?
You're on, Bob.
Bad catch.
This is Kathy Young. Our family has lived in Hopkinton for about 8 years. So a couple of years ago, my kid pushed me to do the home composting. And I reluctant doing so because of the too much extra work. Of course, I got the lectures from my kid and we started doing it. And I'm really surprised that how much trash has been reduced just by simply doing the composting. 2/3 of my trash were gone. Since then, I got into learning about and advocating for the sustainability, and I joined the Sustainable Green Committee to work alongside others, contributing into all these aspects. So I was really inspired by the new generation and welcome more young people join the efforts.
Did you know only 34% of children are highly resilient? That means 66% of kids aren't able to cope with and quickly overcome challenges. These findings come from the Cigna Resilience Index, the largest U.S. survey on resilience. Unfortunately, challenges facing children are on the rise. From academics to sports to social pressures, our kids are facing adversity at an alarming rate. For example, social media has changed the way children communicate. This can negatively impact children's confidence and perceptions of themselves. That's why raising a resilient kid is more important than ever. The MRP Project's Raising Resilient Kids program is for parents who want to ensure their child can positively and productively overcome life's obstacles. The series lays the foundation for resilience by arming parents with the tools needed to help kids cope with adversity.
In the 6-week series, we'll highlight the essential role obstacles play in children's development. The facilitators discourage parents from trying to fix problems. Instead, we discuss specific behaviors, thoughts, and actions to help children work through specific situations. We'll provide strategies that can be used to help deal with similar situations in the future. We also spend time during the first couple of sessions discussing ourselves and our own resilience. This is an important aspect to our curriculum, as it is critical for us as parents to be resilient. We can't expect our children to be resilient unless we're modeling resilient behaviors for them. Each class focuses on one topic, and the facilitators provide time for problem solving and group discussions. Participants can support each other, share lessons learned, discuss experiences, and learn from one another.
One of our recent participants said, and I quote, "Raising Resilient Kids was a wonderful series that I am so happy I had the opportunity to participate in. Through this series, I gained new strategies to work with my own children through situations that in the past have felt overwhelming to me. I walked away from this series with new language to use with my children and to help guide them through situations they may encounter in everyday life growing up. I am truly grateful for the discussions, encouragement, and guidance that this series provided. I'd encourage any parent to participate in the MRP's Raising Resilient Kids. If you want to sign up, please visit the mrpproject.org/raisingresilientkids.
And next member up, we have Frisbee, the green-minded frog. Tell me, Frisbee, how did you come by that moniker?
Well, Bob, what goes around comes around, especially on our beautiful #1 planet Earth. Because remember, we have no planet B.
Righto. So, Frisbee, anything you'd like to croak about tonight? Any bug in your bonnet?
As a matter of fact, there is, Bob. And the name of that bug begins with the letter L for litter. And, it's not rocket science how to fix it. You just pick it up. I'll show you. Better yet, don't throw it in the first place, especially since most of it is that curse of the universe, plastic.
I get you, Frizz. I never commit that abomination. I always recycle.
Well, Bob, I hate to burst the bubble we've been in, but it turns out it's a myth that recycling is the cure-all. In fact, 95% of it never gets recycled.
So what's an upstanding citizen to do?
So, just don't buy it in the first place. In fact, there are plenty of alternatives out there if you only look. In fact, I, for one, use super duper compostable bamboo dental floss. I'm telling you, it gets the flies out between my teeth really neat. And just say no to those clamshell takeout containers. They're taking over the real clamshells in the ocean. And not only that, they're mucking up my home sweet swamp.
Do you have your own container?
I certainly do. Just bring your own reusable green container, or red as the case may be. It holds plenty.
Well, that's the echo view from the lily pad of Frisbee, the green-minded frog. How about a game of Frisbee, Frisbee?
You're on, Bob.
Bad catch.
The Sustainable Green Committee is a group of 15 people working hard to help Hopkinton address the serious environmental issues facing us. We develop plans and practical solutions to help save not only our special slice of the planet, but also help save residents, businesses, and municipal organizations money. Double green power. This includes a municipal aggregation plan, so our electricity comes from green supplies, a climate action plan to help us meet the state's net zero carbon emissions target, and so much more. We also provide useful information on green topics. Our website, hopgreen.org, aims to be a one-stop spot for links to some of the best resources out there on solar, EVs, waste reduction, heating, and safe natural resource management. Our social media and email lists help to keep anyone who wants to be informed about everything we're doing, as well as the latest green news. We're always looking for help, so contact us if you'd like to work on this important mission. Thank you. The Sustainable Green Committee is a group of 15 people working hard to help Hopkinton address the serious environmental issues facing us. We develop plans and practical solutions to help save not only our special slice of the planet, but also help save residents, businesses, and municipal organizations money. Double green power. This includes a municipal aggregation plan, so our electricity comes from green supplies, a climate action plan to help us meet the state's net zero carbon emissions target, and so much more. We also provide useful information on green topics. Our website, hopgreen.org, aims to be a one-stop spot for links to some of the best resources out there on solar, EVs, waste reduction, heating, and safe natural resource management. Our social media and email lists help to keep anyone who wants to be informed about everything we're doing, as well as the latest green news. We're always looking for help, so contact us if you'd like to work on this important mission. Thank you.
Solar power is a free gift from the universe. You'll be very surprised at how many programs there are that offer rebates and information for you to save money on your business and your home. You owe it to yourself to find out more information. Go to the website www.mass.gov/solar-information-programs. Many businesses around town are already taking advantage of solar power. Ask your neighbors what they think. You're saving money and you're saving the planet. Life doesn't get more simple than that. And next member up, we have Frisbee, the green-minded frog. Tell me, Frisbee, how did you come by that moniker?
Well, Bob, what goes around comes around, especially on our beautiful #1 planet Earth. Because remember, we have no planet B.
Righto. So, Frisbee, anything you'd like to croak about tonight? Any bug in your bonnet?
As a matter of fact, there is, Bob. And the name of that bug begins with the letter L for litter. And it's not rocket science how to fix it. You just pick it up. I'll show you. Better yet, don't throw it in the first place, especially since most of it is that curse of the universe, plastic.
I get you, Frizz. I never commit that abomination. I always recycle.
Well, Bob, I hate to burst the bubble we've been in, but it turns out it's a myth that recycling is the cure-all. In fact, 95% of it never gets recycled.
So what's an upstanding citizen to do?
So, just don't buy it in the first place. In fact, there are plenty of alternatives out there if you only look. In fact, I, for one, use super duper compostable bamboo dental floss. I'm telling you, it gets the flies out between my teeth really neat. And just say no to those clamshell takeout containers. They're taking over the real clamshells in the ocean. And not only that, they're mucking up my home sweet swamp.
Do you have your own container?
I certainly do. Just bring your own reusable green container, or red as the case may be. It holds plenty.
Well, that's the echo view from the lily pad of Frisbee the green-minded frog. How about a game of Frisbee, Frisbee?
You're on, Bob.
Bad catch.
This is Kathy Young. Our family has lived in Hopkinton for about 8 years. So a couple of years ago, my kid pushed me to do the home composting. And I reluctant doing so because of the too much extra work. Of course, I got the lectures from my kid and we started doing it. And I'm really surprised that how much trash has been reduced just by simply doing the composting. 2/3 of my trash were gone. Since then, I got into learning about and advocating for the sustainability, and I joined the Sustainable Green Committee to work alongside others, contributing into all these aspects. So I was really inspired by the new generation and welcome more young people join the efforts.
Hi, my name is Danielle Cook. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Hopkinton Public Library, and I'm here with my colleague Jack Miller, our teen librarian. We're here to invite you to join us for our reading marathon.
For our reading marathon, simply log 26 hours of reading or other activities in minute increments, and then you'll be able to join us from our trip from Hopkinton to Boston, reading the whole way. Visit our website to sign up for a registration link as well as more details.